I'm Dan Drake. This is Front Up on Visitor Network TV. We have with us today as our guest Leah Cabral. Leah is the assistant town biologist for the town of Nantucket. Welcome, Leah.
Thank
Great
you.
to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get into what you're doing here, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you came from, how you got to be in Nantucket.
Sure. I grew up in Mattapoisett, right off Cape Cod. I would spend the summers out here with my family out on Smith's Point. And through college, I worked here as a lifeguard. And I did gardening, babysitting.
All that good stuff.
All that stuff. And then after I graduated in 2009.
Where'd you go to college?
Eckerd College, down in St. Petersburg, Florida. I just decided to move here. So I've been here ever since.
There's actually a Nantucket girl who's graduating from Eckerd this year.
Oh, really?
In the marine sciences, Sarah Mack.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'll have to get in touch with
You may
her.
run across her.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what is your project that you have going on at the Department of Natural Resources?
Yeah. So last year in 2014, we started a shell recycling program, and it was a high priority in the shellfish management plan. And what we do is we recycle oyster and quahog shell from right now 16 restaurants and 2 raw bars. I'm hoping to get more restaurants and raw bars on board. And we store it out at the DPW to cure for a year, and we'll use it towards oyster restoration in the future.
What do you mean by cure?
So it just sits on land for a year. So
And it's required, is it not?
It's required, yep. And so it sits on land for a year, and the sun just breaks down the tissue, or if there's disease or parasite on the shell, just to ensure that those are killed before they're put back into the ocean.
All right. And then you put them back, and you try to add to what you put back, or do you put one pile here and one pile there and another pile somewhere else?
Yeah, here we sort of have to do it a little different. If you have a natural population, you can basically just spread shell out and the spat will attach to it and start a reef. But because we don't have a huge natural population here, we'll have to have a hatchery phase. So what we do is we bundle the shell up in bags, in mesh bags that are probably about like that big, and we spawn oysters, we raise the larvae, and then you just pour the larvae into a tank that has those mesh bags on the bottom, and the spat will attach to it. And then from there you can move the bags to your restoration spot. So you just put the bags, line them up, and build a reef.
What are the chances of the oyster staying there? Because scallops don't stay in one place very long.
Yeah.
They move around, but oysters are different, aren't they?
Yeah, they'll be there. They'll stay there. They need to attach to a suitable substrate. That's the whole point why we're recycling the shell and saving it from going into the landfill, because they're chemically attracted to oyster shell. So they need that substrate to attach to in order to metamorphosize into adulthood. So the oysters will stay there.
Now you mentioned quahog shells as well.
Yeah.
Why quahog shells?
Quahog shells are nice because they're really thick, so they don't deteriorate as fast as like scallop shells. So they'll be there for a while when the oyster spat attaches to it. You know, they'll be there for years.
The spat will attach to the quahog shells as well as the oyster shells?
Yes, they
will. Will it attach to other varieties of shells?
They do, but...
I was thinking about this great mound of scallop shells that we have every year.
Actually, this past spring we spawned oysters, and the oysters attached to scallop shell. So we do have some oysters that are attached to scallop shell right now, but it's not the preferred shell.
For them or for us, or either.
Yeah.
Where are you talking about trying to put these reefs?
We're not sure yet. We're looking.
Because originally, I believe you talked about Pulpus Harbor.
Yeah, we thought Pulpus would be good because I've talked to a couple fishermen, harbor users, and they said that oysters used to be there in the past. But we want to find a place that's accessible to the public, that's away from other aquaculture users and harbor users. It won't get in the way, and has like a nice hard sandy bottom. So when you put the shell in there, it doesn't just
sink down, and disappear. The way we're all doing right now.
Yeah. So we have a couple sites that we're thinking. This summer, I'm going to do some dive surveys, and we're going to do some water quality testing to see and also talk to people and see if they think that this would be a good spot for oysters.
Isn't one of the purposes of doing this to improve water quality?
Yeah.
How does that work?
So one oyster filters about 30 gallons a day, which is a lot of water. So if you have more oysters out there, obviously it's filtering more water and taking nitrogen out. So they improve water quality by that, and then also by filtering any suspended like sediments will drop to the bottom, so the water clarity is better, and that helps produce.
What do they do with all this stuff?
They just
that they sort of strain out of the water.
Yeah, so they're filter feeders, so they are taking out the algae to eat, and then the other nutrients will go as feces or get stored in them. And then if you do harvest the oysters, then you consume whatever they're filtering out.
Great. We better leave that alone. What's your target in terms of what's your goal here?
The goal is to start an oyster reef on Nantucket, and it will be a living classroom. So if scientists come here, or students, they can do experiments on it or study it. We want to see what a small oyster reef actually does have on water quality with improving it, and what kind of species come to it. So just
and I think the results are different depending on where you put it, right?
Right, yeah.
This is not a unique idea. It's going on other places as
Yeah, it's
well.
going on basically all over the United States if you're on the coast, because scientists are realizing how oysters are kind of like an easy fix for water quality issues. And if you have the spat already in the water, you just put the shell out and it starts a reef.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Will these oysters be harvestable, or are they just going to stay there and create a larger reef?
We would like them not to be harvestable, so we can study the effects of the reef. But if this first reef is successful and then we can build other ones, then we'd look into that for them to be harvestable.
So it shouldn't be too accessible to the public.
Right. We don't want poachers.
Right. What other? I mean, this is only part of what the Natural Resources Department is doing in terms of its hatchery.
Yep.
I know there's a lot going on down there right now. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the hatchery, we produce bay scallop larvae. That's kind of our main focus. And for the past couple summers, we've released, last summer I believe we released 160 million bay scallop larvae. So we spawn the scallops, we raise the larvae until they're about 10 or 12 days old. When they start to grow their foot, that means that they need to attach to something. So we release them into the harbor so they can attach to eelgrass and grow. So that's our main focus. We also spawn.
But that's why eelgrass is so important in the health of the eelgrass. Yes.
Yep. And then we also spawn and grow out quahogs. And we've done some oyster growth studies. We do water quality testing.
Is this the first year you're going to spawn oysters?
Last year we spawned them,
Oh, that's
and then
right. You put them on the scallop shells.
Before I was here, they spawned them, I think in 2010 maybe. But this year the hatchery is getting renovated, so we're doing a lot of field work. We're going to try to spawn scallops, but we won't have any facility to grow them in, and we won't be able to grow algae to feed them. So it'll be a little different this summer.
That makes it a little difficult.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get a good idea from that of how much good the spawning of scallops in the hatchery has helped.
Yeah, we're going to do some studies too about the natural spawn. We're going to put spat bags out and test different areas.
Yeah. Good. Well, it's exciting. It's something that I think people need to know about, and as you go forward, how are you going to keep the public involved and engaged in this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I definitely want to get the community on board with it and to teach them about the program and why we're doing it. We started last year, but a lot of people don't really know what's going on. So for the restaurants,
I haven't seen too many Shuck It for Nantucket
I know, yeah,
stickers around.
I produced some bumper stickers, so hopefully people will put those on their car, and then also informational rack cards that just say about the program and how you can help as a community member and what we're doing. So the restaurants hand those out to customers if they're interested in learning more about the program. We're also hoping to have more shell recycling events, so the public can come out and enjoy oysters and learn about the program. And what else are we doing? And then I'm just trying to do more lectures and reach out to other people, you know, different multimedia outlets. So.
And in terms of the public's involvement, how can they help? What other than leaning on or dumping their own oyster shells in the appropriate places?
Yeah, they can eat oysters at the restaurants that recycle the oyster shell. They can contact me, and if they have a party and they have oysters served there, they can keep them, and I'll come pick them up so they can add to our shell pile. They can volunteer if they want to help pick up the buckets and weigh the shell and then clean the buckets, which is not the fun part. And then when it is, you know, in a year or two, when we are planning on the oyster reef, they can help with that. I know we'll need a lot of help with the oysters and with moving the spat and everything.
You hire somebody to do the collection. You don't do it yourself, do you?
No, I don't. I do when they can't do it. But yeah, we got money through the Nantucket Shellfish Association to actually run the program. And through that, I hire a shell recycling intern who goes in the heart of the summer, 7 days a week, to pick up the shell from all the restaurants and then dump it at the pile and clean the buckets and just keep up with the restaurants, make sure that they have enough stickers and informational rack cards and everything. So
one last question: is there a list anywhere that people can consult of the restaurants and so forth that participate?
Yep, we have a shell recycling webpage. So if you go to the town website and then go to the Natural Resources Department, you'll see a little tab that says Shell Recycling Program, and on that it has all the restaurants and raw bars that participate. The benefits of oysters and oyster reefs and why we're doing the program.
You should give the Shellfish Association a link to that page too.
I did.
Did you? Good.
Yes. Up in the first paragraph it says that with funding from the Nantucket Shellfish Association.
No, a link to the Shellfish Association's website.
Yeah, I hyperlinked Nantucket Shellfish Association, so you can click on.
No, but the Shellfish Association's webpage should have a link.
A link back to ours.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, that'd be great.
Not to the towns generally, just to yours.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's great, Leah. I wish you well with the program.
Thank you.
And thank you for telling us about it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Leah Cabral from the Department of Natural Resources of the town of Nantucket. Thank you.